My parents disowned me for refusing to delay my wedding for my divorced sister. Months later, her remarriage exposed their hypocrisy. I have a sister named Rose, 32, female, who got divorced a few months ago. It has been a tough time, and I've been trying to be there for her, but if I'm being honest, Rose and I have never been close. She was not a good big sister. She and her little group of friends tormented me for years, and my parents never intervened. I always felt like an outsider in my family. Fast forward to a few months ago when Rose got divorced. She has been a mess. She didn't work, so she had to move back in with our parents. I am not close to my parents or Rose and don't visit them often, so it didn't matter to me. The thing is, even growing up, I always felt like the black sheep. Rose was the golden child. She did everything right, straight A's, perfect prom queen moments. And my parents adored her. Meanwhile, I was the rebellious, difficult one. I got into arguments, broke curfew, dyed my hair crazy colors, you name it. But the worst part was how Rose used to make me feel. She would bully me, not just casually, but it was like she went out of her way to exclude me from making plans with her friends right in front of me, to spreading rumors about me at school. She made sure I knew I wasn't welcome. And then there was my parents' reaction, or lack thereof. No matter what Rose did, they always took her side. I remember telling them once about the things she said to me, and they brushed it off like, oh, that's just how sisters are. It hurt a lot, and I carried that resentment with me through adulthood. However, about a month after my sister's divorce, my partner Joshua, 29, male, proposed to me. It was one of the happiest moments of my life. I mean, I had been waiting for this for a while. Joshua and I had been together for almost 4 years, and we had talked about marriage a lot. So, when he finally proposed, it felt like everything was falling into place naturally. I told my parents right away. Even though we weren't exactly close, I thought maybe, just maybe, this could be something that would bring us together. I started getting into wedding planning mode almost immediately. Venues, dresses, flowers, you know the drill. I was so excited to share this moment with my friends and the few family members I'm actually close with. But then, a few weeks later, I got a call from my mom. She sounded serious and told me they had something important to discuss with me. Honestly, my first thought was that maybe it had something to do with Rose and her whole post-divorce mess. I just had a gut feeling that whatever was coming wasn't going to be good. So, I drove to their house the next evening, kind of bracing myself for the worst. And sure enough, as soon as I sat down, my mom came out with it. She told me that they were hoping I would postpone my wedding by 2 years. Yes, 2 years. Because Rose had just gotten divorced. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My wedding postponed because my sister got divorced. It was so absurd that I actually laughed out loud for a second, thinking she must be joking. But nope, she was dead serious. She explained that Rose was still heartbroken and needed time to move on and potentially find another man. And apparently, my wedding would somehow interfere with that process. I sat there stunned and asked my mom if she was really serious. Like, how could she even think that my wedding had anything to do with Rose's love life? My wedding, one of the biggest days of my life, was supposed to be delayed because of Rose's bad decisions. My mom then hit me with the classic, "We are family. We need to support each other." I've heard this from her a million times. It's always about supporting Rose. It's like they expect me to just be this silent, supportive figure in the background, constantly putting her needs first. I couldn't help but get angry. I told my mom this was ridiculous, flat out stupid, and that I couldn't believe she had the nerve to ask me something like that. And then I just left. I didn't want to stay there and listen to more of their excuses or guilt tripping. But it didn't stop there. My mom kept calling me over the next few days, trying to convince me that this was the right thing to do and that it wasn't just about Rose, but about the family as a whole. She kept saying how unfair it would be for Rose to attend my wedding while still dealing with her divorce. But like, when has life ever been fair? Things don't stop just because one person is going through something. It's not like I'm trying to rub my happiness in Rose's face. I just want to get married and start my life with Joshua. My dad got involved, too, which was a surprise because he's usually pretty hands-off when it comes to this kind of drama. He tried to reason with me, saying how emotional Rose was right now and how my wedding would be too much for her to handle. He made it sound like my wedding would be this huge burden on her, as if my happiness was somehow going to make her more miserable. But again, I just don't see how that's my problem. I can't control how she feels, and I certainly can't put my life on hold indefinitely just to spare her feelings. After that, my parents kept calling and bugging me for days. Every time I saw their name pop up on my phone, I just knew it was going to be more of the same guilt trip about postponing the wedding. Honestly, I was starting to lose my patience with them. My sister, on the other hand, hadn't said a word to me. It was all coming from my parents, and I was beginning to wonder if this was really what Rose wanted or if my parents were just projecting their own issues onto me. So, after about a week of this back and forth, I decided to take matters into my own hands and called Rose directly. I was pretty calm at first, just trying to get to the bottom of it. I asked her straight up if she was the one who put my parents up to this or if they were just overreacting on their own. And that's when she confirmed it. Yes, she did think it would be better if I postponed the wedding. Her reasoning: she said that during the wedding, all the relatives would be asking her about the divorce, and she wasn't ready to deal with that kind of attention. I was stunned. I understand that a divorce is a big deal, but this was the wedding we were talking about, one of the biggest days of my life. Why should my wedding be overshadowed by her worries about what people might say to her? I told her as calmly as I could that this was my wedding. And I highly doubted anyone would be pestering her about something so personal at an event that was supposed to be about Joshua and me. I mean, let's be real. At weddings, people are too busy focusing on the couple getting married, the food, the dancing, and their own lives. Who's going to go up to Rose and ask invasive questions about her failed marriage at my wedding of all places? But of course, she wasn't willing to listen. She just kept insisting that she wasn't emotionally ready to face everyone and that if I cared about her at all, I'd consider waiting until she felt stronger and more prepared to handle the attention. The more she talked, the angrier I got. I finally just laid it out for her. I told her that the wedding was going to happen whether she liked it or not, and whether she or our parents showed up or not. I wasn't going to put my life on hold because she was insecure about people asking her uncomfortable questions. That was on her to deal with, not me. After I hung up, I called my parents right away and told them the same thing. I said, "Look, I love you guys, but I'm not postponing the wedding. If you want to support me, that would be great. If not, I'll understand, but the wedding is happening with or without you." My mom predictably started crying and saying how I was tearing the family apart and how Rose needed time to heal. But at that point, I had made up my mind. I wasn't going to back down, and the wedding did happen 3 weeks ago. I got married to Joshua, and it was beautiful, even though my parents didn't show up. I won't lie, walking down the aisle alone was tough. I had imagined that moment my whole life. And in my head, it always involved my dad by my side. But as I walked towards Joshua, seeing his face light up with that huge smile, it hit me that I was doing this for us. Not for my parents, not for Rose, not for anyone but Joshua and me. And honestly, that was enough. I felt at peace with my decision. I was surrounded by my closest friends and the people who truly support us. Once the ceremony was over and we got to the reception, things got a little more complicated. Most of my extended family had shown up, including some aunts, uncles, cousins who hadn't been involved in the drama, but they noticed. They noticed that my parents weren't there, and obviously they were curious. People started asking, "Where are your mom and dad? Or is everything okay?" And I knew it was only a matter of time before I'd have to explain the whole messy situation. At first, I tried to dodge the questions, not wanting to make the day about family drama. But the curiosity just kept coming. Eventually, I sat down with a few of my aunts and cousins and told them everything. How my parents had demanded I postpone the wedding, how they wanted me to put my life on hold for Rose's sake, and how in the end they chose not to come when I refused to give in to their demands. I didn't sugarcoat it. I was tired of pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. Their reactions were a mix of shock and disbelief. Some of them were horrified that my parents would even ask something so ridiculous, while others were angry on my behalf. It felt like a weight was lifted off my shoulders, finally being able to share my side of the story, and honestly, it felt good to have some of my family understand what I'd been dealing with. As the night went on, more people heard the story, and by the end of the night, it was pretty much common knowledge. I thought there might be some backlash, but instead something unexpected happened. My parents started getting ostracized by the rest of the family. It was like the whole thing had opened people's eyes to how they've been treating me all these years, putting Rose first, expecting me to constantly play second fiddle to her. People began reaching out to me to offer their support, saying things like, "I had no idea it was this bad, and you did the right thing by standing your ground." Then something even crazier happened. A cousin of ours who's getting married next month uninvited my parents from her wedding. Apparently, she didn't want that kind of negativity on her own big day. I wasn't expecting that at all, and part of me feels a little guilty. But at the same time, I can't help but feel validated. For years, I felt like an outsider, like I was the one always causing problems or not being understanding enough. But now, people were starting to see that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't all on me. After my wedding, Joshua and I went on our honeymoon for a week, and it was honestly the best escape I could have asked for. We went to this beautiful beach resort, just the two of us, away from all the family drama. I didn't check my phone for the most part, just soaking in the peace and quiet. I knew there would be messages from my parents and probably my sister, but I just couldn't deal with it during the honeymoon. It was our time to relax and start this new chapter without all the stress. Once we got back, reality hit me pretty hard. I decided to finally listen to the voicemails that had piled up. Honestly, I wasn't prepared for what I heard. Instead of my parents trying to talk things out or even attempt a civilized conversation, the messages were filled with cursing and swearing. My mom called me an entitled brat, among other colorful terms. My dad's tone was more of the same, and at one point, he even said that I was tearing the family apart. It wasn't just anger, it was downright nasty. The guilt trips, the passive-aggressive remarks, the constant accusations that I was selfish, all of it was just too much. I ignored the messages at first, thinking that they'd calm down after a few days. But that didn't happen. In fact, things just escalated. They started calling even more frequently, leaving voicemails filled with the same toxic crap. When I blocked their numbers, they found other ways to reach out: email, Facebook, and even Instagram. They were relentless. My sister, who hadn't said a word since the wedding, finally chimed in, sending me long messages about how I ruined the family by choosing Joshua and my happiness over family unity. It was honestly exhausting. At one point, they even started using new phone numbers to get around being blocked. I blocked one number, and within a few hours they'd be back with another. It felt like I was playing some twisted game of whack-a-mole, but instead of moles, it was just toxic family members who couldn't take no for an answer. I'll admit, I started to get really frustrated. I mean, what do you do when your own family just won't leave you alone? Every time I try to take a step back and focus on my own life, they'd find a way to pull me back into the drama. It was like they couldn't handle the fact that I was happy without them, that I didn't need their constant approval or validation anymore. I talked to Joshua about it, and he's been super supportive. He suggested everything from changing my phone number to cutting off contact entirely. But part of me feels so conflicted. They're still my parents. You know, even after everything they've said and done, there's this little part of me that feels guilty, like I'm somehow the bad guy for blocking them out. But at the same time, I know I can't keep letting them treat me like this. I tried explaining to them how their behavior was affecting me, but they didn't want to hear it. My mom just kept saying things like, "You're choosing your husband over your own family, and you'll regret this when we're gone." It was classic emotional manipulation. At this point, I don't even think they're interested in understanding my side. It feels like they just want control. Like they're upset that I've broken free of their influence, and they're doing everything they can to reel me back in. I'm honestly at a loss here. Part of me thinks I should just cut them off completely, change my number, delete them from social media, and go full no contact. But then there's this nagging voice in the back of my mind telling me that I'll regret it, that one day I'll wish I had handled things differently, or that maybe, just maybe, they'll finally come around and realize how toxic their behavior has been. But let's be real. What are the chances of that actually happening? From everything I've seen so far, they're not going to change. If anything, they seem to be doubling down, acting like I am the one who betrayed them by standing up for myself. I can't keep living like this, constantly walking on eggshells, waiting for the next wave of guilt-laden messages to roll in. So, Reddit, I need advice. What can I do to finally put an end to this? Has anyone else been in a similar situation with family members who just wouldn't stop harassing them? How did you handle it? Is going no contact really the best option here, or is there some middle ground I haven't thought of yet? I feel like I've tried everything, but they just won't let go. I want to move on with my life and focus on my marriage, but it feels like my family is determined to keep me trapped in this cycle of guilt and obligation. Any advice would be appreciated. Hi guys. A lot of you have been asking what life was like when I was younger, so I figured I'd share a bit more background about my family dynamic. Honestly, there's no huge dramatic story, no one big blow up or moment that made me realize my family didn't have my back. It was more of a slow, steady realization that I was growing up in a house where I didn't feel emotionally supported or understood. It's kind of hard to explain without sounding ungrateful because on paper, my parents did what they were supposed to do. I had food, clothes, went to school, and we went on family vacations sometimes, but I never felt like I was actually loved or truly valued. Growing up, my parents were always way more focused on my oldest sister, Rose. And not just in the typical older sibling gets more responsibility way. It was like in their eyes, Rose could do no wrong, while I was the troublemaker, the difficult one, the one they had to tolerate. I'd bring home good grades or try to show them something I was excited about, and they'd give me this half-hearted, "That's nice, Lexi," before moving on to whatever Rose needed. She was always the center of their attention, and I was just there. It's hard to explain how isolating that feels as a kid, constantly being pushed to the side like you're invisible. And it wasn't just that one time. That pattern repeated over and over again throughout my childhood. I think I was around 16. I got into a pretty serious fight with a group of friends at school. It was one of those teenage things where it felt like the end of the world at the time. I came home crying, hoping for a little comfort or maybe even some advice. I'm not saying I expected a full-on therapy session, but a "hey, it'll be okay" would have been nice. Instead, when I told my parents about it, my dad literally said, "You probably brought it on yourself. You should learn to pick better friends." That was it. No hug, no encouragement, just blame. Meanwhile, if Rose came home with even the smallest issue, they'd drop everything to help her through it. And speaking of Rose, let's talk about her for a second. She wasn't exactly the model of a supportive older sister. In fact, she pretty much went out of her way to make my life miserable whenever she could. She had this little clique of friends who were just as stuck up as she was. And they thought it was hilarious to torment me. They'd do stuff like hide my things, make fun of me for my clothes, or even prank call the house and pretend to be people from school saying awful things about me. It was the kind of stuff that sounds silly now, but as a kid, it really messed with my self-esteem. And the worst part, my parents knew about it. I'd tell them what Rose was doing, and they just shrugged it off, saying, "She's just teasing you, Lexi. It's normal sibling stuff." But it never felt normal to me. There was one particularly bad incident when I was about 13. Rose and her friends convinced me to play a game of makeover with them. I should have known better, but I was so desperate for any attention or acceptance from my sister that I went along with it. They proceeded to cake my face with makeup in the most ridiculous way possible, making me look like a clown. Then, without me realizing it, they took pictures and sent them to people at school. The next day, everyone was laughing at me, and when I got home crying, my parents just said, "It's just a joke. Don't be so sensitive." No punishment for Rose. No sympathy for me. Just the same old deal with it attitude. Looking back, I realized that these were the building blocks for the relationship, or lack thereof, that I have with my family today. I spent years trying to win their approval, to make them see me as someone worthy of their love and attention, but it never worked. They were too busy with Rose and her problems to care about me or what I was going through. Honestly, I think that's why I've become the person I am today, someone who's learned to be independent and to stand up for myself even when it's hard. That's why when the whole wedding situation happened, it wasn't the first time I felt let down by my family. It was just the tipping point. I had spent years being the second choice, the afterthought. And when they asked me to postpone my wedding for Rose's sake, it felt like the final straw. It was like they hadn't learned anything from all the times they had put her first and me last. They expected me to keep playing the same role I'd always played, the one who sacrificed her happiness for the sake of family unity. But I couldn't do it anymore. I finally chose myself, and honestly, it feels like a huge relief. So, yeah, that's the gist of my childhood. Nothing super dramatic, but a whole lot of emotional neglect and favoritism that left its mark. It's taken me a long time to realize that it's okay to put my needs first, and that just because they're family doesn't mean I have to tolerate toxic behavior. I've got Joshua now. We're building our own little family where I feel loved, supported, and respected, which is something I never really had growing up. Thanks for reading, and I appreciate everyone who's reached out with advice and kind words. It really means a lot, and I'm learning that it's okay to set boundaries, even with family. It's tough, but I know I'm doing what's best for me. So, about a week after Joshua and I got back from our honeymoon, my parents, unsurprisingly, found another way to get under my skin. They sent me a message saying they wanted my childhood stuff out of their house and that I should come and pick it up on Sunday. The message was cold and abrupt, but at that point, I was pretty much over it. I figured I'd just go grab my things and that would be that. So, I replied with a simple, "Okay," trying not to make a big deal of it. But when I actually drove over there, Joshua with me for support, what I saw was beyond ridiculous. All of my stuff was already out on the lawn, piled up like a garage sale no one wanted to buy from. And not just neatly placed, mind you. It looked like they had tossed everything out haphazardly, as if it had been sitting there for hours, maybe even days. Some of my old books were damp from being exposed to the morning dew, and a bunch of clothes and childhood toys were dirty, as if they'd been left in the grass for a while. I could see some water stains on things I actually cared about, old photo albums, sentimental keepsakes. It was like they couldn't wait to get rid of me, and my stuff was just collateral damage. I was furious. I mean, who does that? It wasn't even about the stuff. It was about the blatant disrespect. It was like they were sending a message saying, "We're done with you." But as mad as I was, I knew they were expecting me to blow up, to yell or cry or demand answers. I could practically see my mom watching from the window, waiting for me to react. And honestly, I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction. So instead of flipping out, I kept my cool. I calmly turned to Joshua and asked him to help me load everything into the truck. We didn't speak to my parents. Didn't knock on the door or ask for an explanation. We just loaded up the truck in silence. I think Joshua could tell I was holding back a lot, but he didn't say anything. Just helped me get it done. It was weird, though, because as we were packing everything up, I realized something. I wasn't sad. I wasn't heartbroken or devastated. I was just relieved. This was the last thing I needed to fully close the chapter on my relationship with my parents. In a strange way, them throwing my stuff out like that felt symbolic. It was like they were finally showing me in no uncertain terms that I wasn't welcome in their life anymore. And instead of being upset, I felt free. Free from the emotional games, the guilt trips, and the constant expectation that I was supposed to bend over backward to fit into a family that never really made space for me. It felt like they were cutting the final tie. And honestly, I was more than ready to let it go. Hello everyone. I know it's been a few months, but something wild happened, and I just had to share it with you all. So, remember my sister Rose? The same sister who was too heartbroken and devastated after her divorce to attend my wedding? Yeah. Well, she's getting married next week. I swear I'm not making this up. The woman who claimed she needed at least 2 years to move on and find herself a new man is walking down the aisle in less than 7 days. The irony is too much. And you know how I found out? Not from her, not from my parents, because they haven't spoken to me since the wedding debacle, but from one of our cousins. She sent me a screenshot of their engagement announcement on social media. I was sitting at home minding my own business. And boom, there it was, Rose all happy and in love, showing off her ring with her new fiancé like none of the drama from the past year ever happened. I had to laugh. Like I couldn't even be mad. It's honestly hilarious at this point. What's even crazier is that I've heard absolutely nothing from my parents or Rose about the whole thing. And you know what? I'm totally okay with it. It feels like they've officially written me off. And honestly, the feeling is mutual after everything that's happened. I don't even care to be involved in their lives anymore. It's kind of liberating, to be honest. I'm not sitting here waiting for their approval or worrying about what they think of me. I've moved on, and clearly so have they. So that's it. Rose is getting married. My parents are doing their thing. And I'm over here living my best life with Joshua. Life is good, and I'm not looking back.